This is a Willets Point, Shea Stadium-bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's episode 223 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. First off, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all enjoyed it with your loved ones, with your family, with your friends. And I want you to make sure that you are a part of the Subway to Shea family as well. Make sure you're subscribing to Subway to Shea on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, if you prefer to listen to the show. But if you want to be a part of the chat, you want to be part of the conversation, you're doing that right here on YouTube. You could also do it on X, but YouTube is probably the best possible way to do it. Also with YouTube, you could do super chats, super stickers, and super thanks, which are available for you. And you can follow me at Ant Rivera 86, as well as all of the Subway to Shea, social media tags on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. Shout out, 25 people already in this room. It's a Sunday morning. You got NFL coming up in about a couple of hours. You got hockey in the air as well. So a lot of things going on in the world of sports, and obviously New York Mets baseball, and it's not the greatest stuff to be talking about. And I don't want to talk about this. This is not going to be something that I'm going to talk about the whole entire hour. All right, because there's other platforms, there's other content creators, there's other podcasters that you can go listen to this and, give your opinions on this whole clubhouse tension that's going on between the Mets all of a sudden. There's not much to be talking about. So what else do we got to talk about but bringing up old news, which it is to me, specifically what has been going on. As I said, this supposed clubhouse tension, things that we already knew. This Mike Puma article that came out for the New York Post a couple of days ago, talking about the relationship between Francisco Lindor as well as Jeff McNeil, and then Lindor's relationship with Soto. Let's start off with that one real quick first, because, obviously there's two different personalities. We know what we were getting when Juan Soto signed here. We were told that he's a very, quiet, close to the vest, very family-oriented guy, just wants to play baseball, just wants to win the World Series. Not to say that, Lindor is not, for being a flashy, the fashionista, or whatever you want to call it, very in tune with himself and his personality. Doesn't mean that Lindor doesn't want to win just as much as Soto. So this is not a big issue to me, this chilly relationship that was talked about in the article. Look, it doesn't matter if they hang out or if they don't hang out. All I want to see them do is win. And I'm pretty sure that's all you want to see them do. If this team was winning, we probably wouldn't be talking about this, because you look quickly at this 1986 Mets team, the last team to win the World Series. You had a whole bunch of partygoers, nightclubbers in Keith Hernandez and Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden, all of those guys that went out and party, Ojeda and Darling, all those guys party. One guy that really wasn't a part of that was Gary Carter. Gary Carter was a family guy, loved to be around his family, was all business, was all about playing the game. Nothing came of that. So yes, obviously there's going to be, these guys aren't going to hang out with each other all the time. And that's okay. So I think there's really no credence or issue. And as Jeff Cohen's saying, that's a non-story. Timing is very suspicious. Obviously, there's nothing going on right now. And like I said, I don't want to get into this too much, because we have a lot more important issues to deal with this team. There's a lot more going on with the New York Mets right now. Our current lineup, as stated right now, which I know is going to change, but right now this lineup is Francisco Alvarez at catcher, Mark Vientos at first base, Marcus Semien at second, Francisco Lindor at short, Brett Beatty at third. You got Juan Soto in right field, Tyrone Taylor in center field, and probably a combination of Jeff McNeil and this guy that they just signed, Jose Ramos, in left field. That's not going to cut it. Not to mention that we have no bullpen at this moment in time, and we need an ace. That's what should be being talked about at this time. But right now, it's all about this clubhouse tension that's going on with the team. And like Will White said, let's not be distracted by stupidity. It's so stupid. I agree. We've dealt with this McNeil Lindor thing since 2021. And to be honest with you, if it was such a big deal, Jeff McNeil would probably be gone already. But these two guys have been teammates for 5 years. So they must tolerate each other enough. They must. Duran Rivera in the chat saying, and I think it was like 87 or 88 that Dallas Strawberry and Keith Hernandez got into a punching fight during spring training. Look, I don't care who leaked the info. We knew this stuff already from Raccoon all the way 2021. I mean, Lindor gifted Jeff McNeil the car for the batting title. This is just a non-issue. If they were winning, if they were in the playoffs, in the NLCS, or even in the World Series, no one's talking about this. If they win the World Series, or at least get there, no one cares that McNeil and Lindor had a spat in a June 20th game. Like I said, these guys have been teammates now for 5 seasons. And if the tensions and arguments and fight was that bad, Jeff McNeil would be gone already. Look at what happened in 1999, right? Luis Lopez and Ray Ordonez, remember them getting into a fight where in the newspaper we saw Ray Ordonez's face all messed up? Do you remember that? They got into an actual physical fight. And I still remember his picture in the newspaper, Ray Ordonez's face all messed up. And how upset I was about it because I was a huge Ray Ordonez fan. And then Luis Lopez was gone the next season. He wasn't even a part of the Mets anymore. So this is really a nothing issue. I don't want to spend any more time on it. I'll get into some of the comments real quick, and then we'll move on from this whole situation. Shout out to Mr. StarQuest44. I don't know if you're new here, but maybe new to the chat. I don't think I've seen you before. Good morning to you. Good morning to Carlos Ramos, Duran Rivera, Will White, Shark Vader Studios, G Money Stacks, my guy in here. Master Flip, as he said, this is the result of dry times, non-stories turned into headlines. Absolutely. Maureen's in the chat. Appreciate you for being here as well. Nelson Cruz, my guy, Nelson Cruz in the chat as well. Really appreciate everyone for being a part of this. Armand as well in here, and Carlos Ortiz, and my guy, John Sapanaro from Till Mets Do Us Part. This is nothing. Any creator perpetuating this should be ashamed to use their voice in this space. If you know, you know. There you go. Look, there's going to be other creators that do this, and that's fine. I'm not going to get on them for that, and if they want to talk about it. But I want to talk about what this team is going to do this season, this off season, because we really need this Mets team to right the ship. There's no excuse to me from David Stearns after this upcoming season's over. If this team does not make the postseason, it's an absolute failure. Absolute failure. And I start to question whether David Stearns is the right guy for this organization. Now, he's going to be here no matter what we say, right? He's going to be here for the 5 years. This is the guy that Steve Cohen has wanted since he became owner, outside of probably Theo Epstein or Billy Beane. This is the guy he wanted. So he's got his guy. He's going to give him the 5 years to get the job done. But I will start questioning, and I've already done this, but it will be to a new extent, question whether David Stearns is the right guy to do this job. because if this team doesn't make the postseason, it's a failure. For me personally, this team's got to make the NLCS. That's what I thought last season when they added Soto and they became within 2 games of the World Series. I still feel that way. No matter how many lineup issues they have, no matter how many people in the bullpen are not a part of the team right now, the rotation with all the young kids, this team has to get to the postseason, and for me, has to get to the NLCS. Outside of the Dodgers, how many better teams are there that can contend? And all I heard during the postseason was, well, if the Mets were in here, I think that they would give the Dodgers a good run for their money. Well, they didn't make it. And now they have to pick up the pieces and get the job done and forget about clubhouse tensions and what happened on June 20th, because I personally don't care about it. I care about this offseason and what this team is going to do to get to the World Series. Shout out to my good friend Dexter Henry, a part of the chat. You catch him on the New York Post. I will be joining straight out of Flushing. Tonight is the recording. I don't know if it's coming out tonight, but I'll get into more details into that show later. We got a fun show coming up for you later on this evening. Glad to be a part of it and glad to have Dexter have me be a part of it. Shout out to True Mets Sports in the chat as well. Lane Kerner in here. We're going to get to as many comments and questions as possible during this show. Michael King, 838, shout out to you as well. And there's just so much to talk about. Now, I want to get your thoughts real quick because now we are a week post-trade of the Marcus Semien, Brandon Nimmo 1-for-1 deal. How are you guys feeling about that today? I still think that it's a good deal. I know that Brandon Nimmo's a fan favorite. Heck, I loved Brandon Nimmo as a New York Met. But the fact that the New York Mets were able to get out from what was probably not the best deal with Brandon Nimmo is huge. Now, I know it's a lot of people love Brandon Nimmo and all, like I said before, but the Mets really needed to get out of this deal, and they did just that. The 5 years was just too much. The money was just too much. Now that they get Marcus Semien, they could cut those years down to 2. And look, Nimmo was signed to be a center fielder for the New York Mets. He only played 1 year in center field. They moved him to left field. He had a good year, and then his body started to fail him. The injuries have mounted. We saw last year the defense was not great. Obviously has trouble throwing and trouble covering ground with the wear and tear on his body. And if you can replace that with a guy who plays great defense and you have a great up the middle between Marcus Semien and Francisco Lindor, you got to get the chance to do that and make that move. And 2 years less on the deal. So I thought it was a solid trade. If you were going to trade Brandon Nimmo, it was a solid trade to bring in a guy with the veteran presence, with the winning resume that Marcus Semien has, and the leadership that he brings to a clubhouse. Now with all this so-called tension, he can cut it with a knife. But there were some comments made during this whole pressers between David Stearns, Brandon Nimmo, as well as Marcus Semien. Apparently, trade talks had heated up at the GM meetings. Chris Young is a guy that the general manager for the Rangers really wanted to have Brandon Nimmo a part of the team, and so he's gotten him. And David Stearns said in the press conference that these are always tough decisions. This was not easy. Everyone here thinks very highly of Brandon, but in order to create the type of sustainable championship caliber play that we seek to have here, at times, These types of decisions are necessary. That is a huge comment from David Stearns. Huge. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways from his press conference. He goes on to talk about Marcus Semien. Marcus brings an elite level of defense. He's one of the best defensive infielders in baseball and has been for a number of years. He's a winner. He brings a winning drive and determination that we think is going to fit well in our clubhouse. And he balances our lineup from the right side, which is something we were seeking to do. That Another huge comment on Marcus Semien and what he brings to the table for this Mets that I mentioned earlier. Yes, it sucks to lose the offense that Brandon Nimmo brings to the Mets. And table that with what's happening with Pete Alonso, and he might not come back. That's a lot of offense to replace. But the Mets can do it. The Mets can do it with the right couple of moves. And who knows? Marcus Semien was injured last year. Maybe he turns back time for at least this season and has a better offensive year. Maybe a new place to play in helps him become a better player. So we'll see. Stearns then goes on to say, this is a player who can contribute to winning baseball in a variety of ways, and the bat may not actually lead the way at this point in his career. We think there's likely some bounce back in the offensive game, but what we're counting on at the top of his skill set is the contributions he can make for us defensively, how he can perform on the bases, and we think those are going to help us win games. So Stearns was very honest, saying that maybe Marcus Semien's offense doesn't return to the all-star level that it was been, but they brought him here to play defense. And hopefully that up-the-middle defense hopefully gets these guys focused, because we saw a lack of focus on the field. And we saw probably Francisco Lindor's worst defensive season out there. I think he had 13 errors, probably the most, either tied for the most or the most in his career. And that's very unlike Francisco Lindor. So to have Marcus Semien up the middle with him will help out a lot. Both will cover a lot of ground, and hopefully it works out. Marcus Semien, in his comments, says, I think as we really begin to dig in on who this person was, talk to his former teammates, former coaches, people who have been around him, this is someone who takes his craft incredibly seriously, someone who does everything he can on a regular basis to get in the lineup, to perform at a high level, practices hard, and holds those expectations of his teammates as well. And I think that's going to fit in very well with our group. Very blunt on what Stearns had to say about Marcus Semien. We know Brandon Nimmo had his talks about the trade. He was shocked, as obviously. He built a home already in Port St. Lucie, hoping to get his teammates together. And now he's got to go out to Arizona for spring training. So we will see, how that affects him moving forward. Marcus Semien and his thoughts on the whole trade. He goes, my style as a leader, it's definitely something that has evolved. I think the one thing that has remained constant for me is leading by example with how I work, leading by example with how I respect each member of the organization. He then go on to say, treat everybody like a man or a woman, whoever you're working for. For me, I'm mostly talking about my teammates here. Respect them, help them through tough times, get to know them as a person, get to know their family. So when we go out to battle, we know how each other is going to react. He's disappointed in the way that he performed last season. He had a good start to 2024, and now he's had conversations with Jeff Albert as well as Troy Snicker about what he needs to be that MVP caliber bat he was in the lineup. Now, Semien showed flashes, of a return to form before being forced out. He hit 270 with 12 home runs and an 801 OPS over his final 71 games last season. So that is huge. Marcus Semien is going to be a big part of this team over the next couple of years. And then I'm pretty sure the Mets will move on and be ready to go with someone at second base, whether it's Jet Williams. I don't know how long they're going to wait for him unless they trade Jet Williams. But Semien is going to be a big part of this team moving forward. Now, I want to go to the chat here. Master Flip saying it's a week of still waiting for the next big move. I think we will see something, at least one big move at the winter meetings. I think we saw it with Soto to end the winter meetings. I think we'll get something of some bat or maybe even a trade for a pitcher, because we need an ace at the winter meetings. Something's going to happen. I can't see the Mets going into the winter meetings and not having any moves done, any big moves done, because a lot of it right now has been taxi cab call-ups and filling out the minor league roster. Coconut here says, this deal is okay if Stearns re-signs Alonso and Diaz and signs Framber Valdez. Yeah, obviously, we'll probably have a different thought on what this move means. If the Mets don't make any other big moves, it's a different deal then at that point, right? So I think that there'll be more moves to come. Will White likes the move by Stearns. Michael King saying you have to give Stearns a chance to put together a team that he has constructed. And that's what we're going to get this year. We are going to get the team that David Stearns has constructed. So now this is all on him to get this done and get this right. Carlos Ramos in the chat saying re-sign Diaz and load the bullpen, re-sign Alonso, trade for Tatis and load the lineup, give the young arms the rotation. This is how he would go about the offseason. Man, if we could get Fernando Tatis, that would be great. I keep hearing about him, so I assume now that he is trade bait, maybe. He's on the trading block. Hansel saying Semien can change the culture of the team, which I agree with. You heard from David Stearns what type of guy Marcus Semien is, and we will see what he brings to the table and if he can bring this Mets team, if this Mets roster, this clubhouse together. Will White saying we were watching Nimmo break down right before our eyes. Absolutely. And that's a part of the reason why at the beginning of the offseason, if they were going to break up this core, the one guy I would personally have traded was Brandon Nimmo. And a lot of talk was, well, it's hard to do it because the contract's going to be hard to move. And David Stearns was able to do it. Baseball Dad saying it was a baseball move that had to be done. I totally agree with that. Armand saying I did not expect Nimmo to get traded due to his no trade clause and the length of his contract. I like the deal. And that's a big part of it, right? The no trade clause. Brandon Nimmo did not have to approve this trade, and he did so. Obviously, for the betterment of the Mets and the betterment of himself. So I don't know how they're going to handle Brandon Nimmo out there in Texas, but I assume that he's going to be a big part of that offense come 2026. Shark Vader Studios saying, I still stand by what I said. I loved Nimmo. He was one of my favorites, but it was painful watching him play in the outfield. I'm glad we were able to trade him, and the return was Semien. Agree. G-Money Stacks saying, first of all, Marcus Semien's 35 while Brandon Nimmo's 32. It's beyond crazy with this deal, honestly. Do we even know if Marcus Semien is leadership material since he got to the New York Mets? I mean, we don't know if he's done anything yet, but all we've ever heard about Marcus Semien, and this is even from Texas fans, is how much of a leader he is in the clubhouse with the young players in the roster. So the evidence is there. We'll see how it translates in Queens with the Mets. Because obviously if he's not playing well and, it doesn't translate offensively, defensively, the players might feel a little bit different about it. Conrad saying the only problem with the trade is it blocks Jet Williams, which I agree with. But it does give Jet Williams a little bit more time to get seasoned out there, right? Because the Mets have done a disservice to a lot of these minor leaguers by bringing them up way too early. And, maybe we've seen Jonah Tong a little bit too early when they brought up Francisco Alvarez and Beatty, and Mark Vientos probably brought him up too early. So give Jet Williams a little more time in AAA. At this point, even Carson Bench might have leapfrogged him, I think, in the minor league rankings. Hanson saying we gave up Nimmo and brought a real winner, an absolute great deal. Will White saying most of you guys got to get rid of that homegrown mentality. That's a big thing too as well. Obviously, Brandon Nimmo, homegrown Met player. But at this point, if you've been a Met fan for this long, we haven't seen, Tom Seaver was the number one guy, right? That got traded. That should have been homegrown Met forever. There's been so many, right? Darryl Strawberry didn't stay a homegrown Met. Doc Gooden didn't stay a homegrown Met forever. Jose Reyes didn't stay. You could talk about the pitchers, right? Harvey and Syndergaard and DeGrom, Conforto. So many players have not been homegrown Mets for such a long time now. At this point, the mentality has to be, and as Will White put it, you got to get rid of it. But the mentality right now has to be the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. Look at how many players that the Dodgers, homegrown guys, they have gone through. A lot of their players are mercenaries, right? Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. You could talk about Yamamoto and Sasaki and Ohtani. None of those guys are homegrown players, and now they've won back-to-back world championships. Male Met saying the core needs to change. Stop bringing back the same players. Didn't work. Move on. And I think that's what David Stearns is going to do. That's what I think David Stearns is going to do. And Nelson Cruz, good point. This goes back with Marcus Semien clogging up second base. Acuna, Luis Angel Acuna, Mark Vientos, and Ronnie Mauricio were given a chance to grab second base. And they were all beat out also by Brett Baty, because Brett Baty could play second base as well. They didn't grab it. So these guys will probably be off the bench if Vientos is not first base. They'll be off the bench, or they'll probably be traded. Brad saying Nimmo's offense can be replaced. Absolutely. There's a lot of free agents that you can replace him with. John Sabanaro saying Semien is an elite second baseman. His sprint speed has also stayed terrific despite being 35. He was arguably the most durable player in MLB before last year's fluke injury, which I think he got hit in the foot. He took a baseball to the foot, and that kind of derailed the rest of his season. Armand saying Nimmo has neck issues, plantar fasciitis. Nimmo has to be a everyday DH now in his career. And if we want Alonso to DH, Nimmo had to go. This was the whole process of me thinking about trading Brandon Nimmo, because he needs to be a DH, honestly, as Armand says. And as we talked about on this show many times. But if you want to bring back Pete Alonso, who may play first base next year and part of the following season, but is eventually going to become a DH, or if you want to go after a guy like Kyle Schwarber, Nimmo's clogging that up. So, yeah. Shark Vader Studios saying Semien just won a Gold Glove, was one of only 3 captains in all of baseball. I'd say he's a leader. Listening to his presser, he's really excited to work with our hitting coaches. I agree. Yeah, Will White, good point. Maybe that turf out there in Texas is not going to be good for his legs. John also mentioning that Semien played in the worst ballpark in baseball for right-handed pull hitters, which is what he is. Mets are pairing him with a pull the ball for damage hitting philosophy. So I assume that we will get a better version offensively of Marcus Semien, especially in the first season back. He's a 3 to 4 WAR player, as John stated as well. So there you go. So there's a lot to take away from this whole trade that happened last week. It's great to come on with you at midnight to talk about the breaking news of the trade. But now that we are a week away, I think everyone seems to be okay with this trade. You got to sit for a while. You got to think about it. You got to think about what the reasons are that the Mets are making this move, that David Stearns is making this move. And he didn't lie, right? He was honest. He wants defense. He wants run prevention. And that's what this move does. Not only that, but to get out of that contract that Brandon Nimmo had. So now what happens? Now what happens in the outfield? Because I mentioned it earlier. What is going to happen in this Mets outfield? Where you got Juan Soto in right field. At the current state, Tyrone Taylor in center. And a left field of Jeff McNeil and a possible signing that they did, this minor league signing of a Jose Ramos, who has a invite to spring training. What do you do here? Who should be in this outfield? Who should the Mets sign? Who should the Mets trade for? The names that I'm hearing, right? Carson Benj, who I think still needs seasoning in AAA. I don't think he's going to be ready unless he blows the roof off of spring training, a la what Pete Alonso did when he got the call up and was able to come with the team out of spring training. He's really going to have a big-time spring training. But you got Cody Bellinger, who's a great defender, plays in the outfield, could play center, could play left, could play first base. That's going to be huge. Probably the best statistical center fielder, best defensive center fielder or outfielder out there. You got Kyle Tucker as well, who could provide some offense, but he's more of a right fielder. I guess you got Fernando Tatis Jr. I don't know how real the trade, they're willing to trade Fernando Tatis Jr. But if they are, you most definitely have to inquire about it. For sure. And then when you look the trade route, you got Jarren Duran from Boston, which I don't know how well he would play considering the, I guess, issues that he's had mentally out in Boston. We all know New York's a lot worse. And then you got Byron Buxton, who, if he could stay on the field, is a fantastic center fielder. But I wouldn't make a trade for him unless that meant Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez was coming here. So the Mets have possible options out here, and they need to really think about who are they going to bring on this team. Shout out to Matthew Trotta. First time listening, just subbed. Hope your day is good. Where do you think Alonso ends up? I thought with them getting rid of Nimmo that the possibility of Pete Alonso coming back was, a bigger decision for the Mets to make and for him to come back. But I do have my concerns about this talk of run prevention. And Pete wasn't the worst first baseman, but he wasn't great. I would like to see him return. I think he does return because now with Nimmo and Alonso's bat not a part of this lineup, they're going to have trouble scoring runs. So I think that they find a way to bring Pete back, plays first base for about a year and a half, and then he moves to being the DH of the team. I think that's the way to go about it when it comes to Pete Alonso. John saying Stearns has mentioned Benj by name unprompted, which means he thinks he's ready. The way he talks about Jet, it shows he doesn't think he's quite ready, which could possibly be true. 100%. I do hope Benj is ready. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's Benj plays, whether it's in left or center, and they bring in an outfielder, maybe a Cody Bellinger to help out. I don't know if they're willing to give Kyle Tucker the money that he wants because they already have so much. Matthew saying you can miss Nimmo and still think it's a good trade and root for him to be good in Texas. Mets fans first. Absolutely. I think that's the best way to go about it as a Met fan. That's how I'm going about it. I'm going to miss Nimmo, but this is a good trade, and I wish him nothing but the best in Texas and much success. Jeff Koenig asking, does the team go out and get a major league left fielder or right fielder and move Soto to left where he has played before? I don't think that Juan Soto is moving from right field. I just don't. Not yet. Not at least for this portion of his contract. I think he stays in right field. I know he's been taking grounders at first base, so that's something that we could see in the future. But I think that Juan Soto stays in right field and they get someone to play left. Whether it's Bellinger, whether Benj starts in left, whether they trade for a center fielder, I think that Juan Soto will stay in right field for now. Looking at some of the comments here. Coconut saying, I think the core was fine. It's the pitching that sucked. If Stearns paid for aces in free agency, we would never be talking about the clubhouse or core. Max Fried was available last year as an ace. Look, I even had my concerns about Max Fried. I know he's been an injury-prone pitcher, but he had a great year last year for the Yankees. The Mets do need to figure out what they're going to do at starting pitching. Whether it's make a trade, sign one of these free agents, because this rotation can't be 3 kids and a bunch of guys that can't get to 5 innings in a game. They just can't. And that's been the big problem for this team. Armand is saying, I can see Stearns go with a platoon in left field with Carson Benj and signing Adolis Garcia to a 1-year deal. Right-handed hitting market is thin, and Garcia is the market for 1 year. I didn't even think about that. I know that he was not retained by the Rangers. I don't know how he plays defensively. I have to look into those metrics. But I wouldn't be shocked to see something like that be done either. If the Mets don't want to give money to Kyle Tucker and the years, as well as a Cody Bellinger who's going to be asking for years. The thing with Cody Bellinger, all the positives I talked about, the one negative for him is he really struggled outside of Yankee Stadium last season. He was not great. Peter thinks it's going to be Kyle Tucker that the Mets would go after. Patrick St. Clair was talking about, I think it was Brandon Lau as being the primary DH and splitting time at second base against righties. Lowe also plays first base. He thinks Brandon Lau can be an option for the Mets to bring in. Steven saying trade for Tatis and Buxton or go after Cody Bellinger. Carlos Ramos, we already know, wants Tatis, but he would sign Bellinger as well. Brad feels that the Mets will trade for Buxton. And he has a no-trade clause. Shout out to Armand in the chat for that. Now, also saying that Tatis is only getting traded when new ownership comes in, and says they want Tatis traded to clean up payroll. So they still have to make that transition to new ownership out there in San Diego. Coconut saying Jarren Duran is an extra base machine, 70 extra base hits last year and more prior year. He's the best answer. Trade Jet Williams, Vientos, and Senga, and maybe and throw in Mauricio and Acuna in that deal. Michael King says he would like Brendan Donovan in left. So there's a lot of trades that can be made. There's a lot of free agents. Shout out to my guy Jake Brown who's in there. Appreciate you. Make sure you check out the Mets Daily Show and subscribe to his channel, as well as Till Mets Do His Part, who's in here, and John Saponaro. So there's a lot of differing opinions on who they would like. Jake would like Bellinger. Ranks them in order. Bellinger, Buxton, Duran, Donovan. Thinks one of those guys will be a Met. Good point by Master Flip. Soto is going to play left field for Team DR in March. They should permanently move him over there. Maybe then, maybe if they can convince him to move over, but I still think he's going to be playing right field. I mean, if they're able to, I only see him moving to left field if they get Kyle Tucker, right? If Kyle Tucker, he's naturally a right fielder. Jake Brown saying Yandy Diaz to replace Pete Alonso short term and Ryan Clifford long term. So there's a lot of mixed bag here for who people want in the outfield. One thing I know for sure is if the Mets are trading for a Byron Buxton, as injury prone as he is, I need to have Joe Ryan in that deal or Pablo Lopez. Can't be just a Byron Buxton by himself. So that's who I'm definitely going to need. Now I know, let's go into the pitching here because the Mets do need an ace. The Mets need an ace. And was it Hector Gomez who reported on Thanksgiving that Framber Valdez was close to signing a huge deal with the Mets? I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on Framber Valdez. I prefer the Mets to trade for a starting pitcher, honestly, than to give one of these guys a huge deal. The only guy that I feel like I would give a huge deal to, and he's still trade bait, is Tariq Skubal. That's the only guy that I'm giving a huge deal out to right now. And I don't think that that's going to happen. I think he's going to stay in Detroit for now and probably be traded at the deadline. I mentioned Joe Ryan. I mentioned Pablo Lopez via trade. A guy I also would like to see the Mets go after in a trade is a Freddie Peralta out there in Milwaukee. The relationship that David Stearns has with those players and bringing them up, I think that Freddie Peralta would be a good option. He was 17-6, 2.70 ERA, had a 204 strikeouts on the season, helped the Milwaukee Brewers get to the postseason as their ace. Who would you like to see the Mets go after and bring into this rotation? Because I feel like it's really they're only going to be bringing in one starting pitcher. They tenured a contract to David Peterson, so he'll be back in the rotation. Clay Holmes, I assume, will be in the rotation, so that's your 4 and 5. If Kodai Senga's not traded, he's a part of the rotation. That's 3 guys. Although I assume the Mets will be, trying to figure out how to trade him. I would trade Kodai Senga because there's just too much maintenance involved and the need for a 6-man rotation and all that stuff. So who are the Mets going to bring in here to be that ace guy? You got Nolan McLean could be the number 2. And then I still think that Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong will either need more time down in AAA, definitely Jonah Tong, or those 2 kids will be traded at some point to bring in a starting pitcher. Shout out to the 183 of you that are in this chat right now, a part of the conversation. We got NFL coming up, a lot of sports today, but you're here with me talking New York Mets baseball. Let's go to the chat. Coconut saying Framber Valdez is the best solution for pitching, bona fide number 2, not an ace, but would be our number 1. Is a workhorse that saves the pen. Sign Skubal next offseason or Peralta. That's the thing, though. I don't know if they can sign all of these guys and still sign Edwin Diaz. Obviously, they can do it, right? We know that they can do it because David Stearns has the money. But how much is this team willing to go over the luxury tax? I know Master Flips was asking, I think it was, are they going to be over $350 million? or under 350 mil. If you have to now sign Framber Valdez and one of these stars next, Escobal's going to get a lot of money. He's going to be the highest paid pitcher in all of baseball. And then you're talking about adding offensive bats, right? Whether it's Pete Alonso or Kyle Schwarber, there needs to be at least one or two bats on this offensive team that needs to be added. And then you got to put together the bullpen with Edwin Diaz, right, as your closer, unless you're going in a different direction. I just don't know if they make those moves. But Coconut really wants Framber Valdez, a lefty. He's a good starter, a good number 2. As long as he gives me 5 or 6 innings, I'm good. Jeff Cohen, huge fan of Pablo Lopez. Brad saying to trade for a pitcher, like I've been talking about, and bringing in Imai from Japan, who made a very huge statement saying he wants to beat the Dodgers. So if he wants to do that, then come to Queens. I don't know how good he is. I don't know to the level of a Yamamoto or Sasaki where he ranks in between those guys, or even Senga. But if he's your, third or fourth starter and you add someone else, he can't be the only guy you add. Shark Vader Studio saying, I'd be happy with Joe Ryan. Our new pitching coach worked in the Twins organization and knows Ryan. So maybe the Mets tried to make a move out there and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, bringing in a Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez and Byron Buxton. Carlos Ortiz would like Scuba and Imai. Coconut saying trading for Scuba will cost 3 to 4 of McLean, Tong, Benj, Jet, Sproat, Beatty. We have too many holes, not an ace away. Terrible trade. Tong has higher upside than McLean, and I love McLean's patience. So yeah, I would not do a trade for Scuba for all that, for 1 year of Scuba. Definitely waiting for him for free agency. Jake Brown, not in love with a trade for 1 year of Peralta. Especially if, the names that were mentioned in the Scooble trade are in this trade. I can totally understand that. Master Flip saying, give me a combination of Framber and either Sandy or Peralta. I didn't even get to the Marlins, right? You got Sandy Alcantara. You got Yuri Perez, Edward Cabrera. But I don't know if the Marlins want to trade with the Mets. And I'm pretty sure that they will hold them ransom for all of their prospects. But those are options as well. Good to bring them up, Master Philip. Michael King saying trade for Keller and sign Michael King to a 3-year deal and go for Imai. That's a different way to go about it as well. I don't know if any of them are ace-type material, but I could see that. Carlos Ramos saying that Brandon Sproat is getting traded. He believes that Brandon Sproat is getting traded. Sharga Vader Studios agrees with me that Tong, if he doesn't get traded, needs more seasoning in AAA. He does. He absolutely does. Armand saying Luis Castillo is not top end starter. He used to be. He got hit a lot last year. He's now more of a number 3. Senga for Castillo is just a swap. Seattle has Cole Young for second. No need for Jeff. I guess that there was a trade for Luis Castillo. I mean, I've wanted Luis Castillo for a while now, but I think that ship has sailed. That ship has definitely sailed. They have so much good rotation pieces out in Seattle. To pry one of those guys out would be amazing. Peter saying Mets need a lefty. Valdez is decent. We can't depend on Minaya. That's what I even forgot about. Sean Minaya. He's going to have an opportunity to be in this rotation because they already have, 2 lefties in the bullpen in Minter and Raley. So Minaya is also going to be fighting for a rotation spot. Brad saying save the bullets for a Skeens trade. He's a guy that I haven't heard much of on the trade market, and I'm pretty sure he's got years still left, right? Skeens has years still left on his deal. So I don't see him getting traded now, but man, imagine getting Paul Skeens. G-Money Stack saying, I got to agree with getting Freddie Peralta over Tariq School because that's going to cost the whole farm of prospects. Despite the mistake with the catcher, I feel like he should fit with the New York Mets. The catching thing, isn't that with Framber Valdez, I think? I think that was with Framber Valdez. John saying the problem with signing a long-term starting pitcher deal with Framber is that Skubal will more than likely be a free agent in a year. He's getting $400 million. Do you want to invest $70 million AAV in 2 starting pitchers? That's the issue I had with signing 2 starting pitchers, because we know that they're going to cost a fortune. And that's not really David Stearns' style. Although they said that he was going to get out of his comfort zone, I think signing 2 starting pitchers to mega deals with the Mets having so many needs is not going to be it's not going to be a good idea in my opinion. Baseball Dad, thank you for that. Skeens has 4 years left on his deal. So he's going to cost a buttload. He might cost more than Skubal right now because he's got the years attached. And another good point, Chris. The Mets have so much right now in this rotation, whether it works out or not. You can't forget about Christian Scott as well. So the Mets aren't going to go crazy in adding 2, 3 starting pitchers. I think that they get one, and I think if they're getting one, it's a top-line ace guy. Whether Peralta, Skubal, Ryan Lopez, someone from the Marlins, I don't know if it's someone they sign. I think it's going to be via trade if they get a starting pitcher. Carl's saying, if we load up the bullpen, we don't need the rotation to be great. Just give us innings. The bullpen will shut it down. The lineup will win the games outscoring everyone. Well, they still need a couple of bats in the lineup, right? They're down 2 of their top batters. The 2 top run producers are now gone at this moment. They still need to put together the bullpen because Edwin Diaz is not here, and they'll still need to bring some guys back. But they got to give us innings. This rotation has to give the Mets innings this year. They have to. And I agree with Maureen. No more reclamation projects. Done with it. And as Peter puts it, the farm system has to produce aces, as Stearns said. They do. But we're still ways away from that, I think. I think the closest is Nolan McLean. Tong needs some time. And I don't know if Sproat is technically going to be here. Armand thinks that Stearns will sign Imai to a long-term, 8 years, $200 million. You can also see one of Senga and Peterson getting traded to fill out the bullpen. I wouldn't be shocked. Although I don't know if I want to give up on David Peterson yet. Senga, I'm ready to move on to. David Peterson, who had a bad second half, but went over his innings limit. I kind of want to see how he starts off the year and if he can recreate the magic he did from that 2024 season into the beginning of 2025. Shark Vader Studio saying, desperately need our starters to go more than 4 innings a game. There are starters in baseball who actually pitch 6 innings. Crazy. Yeah, that's the thing. Our guys are going 3, 4 innings. We need guys to go 5, 6 innings. Brad says, I could see Zach Gallen as an option. John saying Peterson's in his last year before free agency. So maybe he's more of a trade deadline deal. You think they trade him right now? Maybe try to get that value back up since he had such a tough second half. So maybe he does get traded. John goes, he's a lame duck for me. He's not getting a new deal with the Mets. I'd trade him in a heartbeat in the right deal. Well, definitely, if the right deal's out there, like Armand said, for some bullpen help, because the Mets aren't going to be making a lot of moves via free agency with all the holes that need to be filled. There's going to be a lot of trades going on, I feel like, this offseason. Shout out to Run Knight in the chat. Appreciate you for being a part of the show. Carlos Ortiz saying, I don't want anyone that holds a QO. That's usually the best thing, right? I don't want anyone that has a QO either. All right, going up from this rotation, let's move to the bullpen because Ryan Helsley signed with the Baltimore Orioles, 2 years, $28 million. How that sets up what we're looking for Edwin Diaz and his deal. I think Edwin Diaz wanted somewhere around $5 million, but the Mets got to get a deal done with Edwin Diaz. I think he's the best closer on the market. If you look at some of the closers here, as I have the free agency list to my left here, which is probably your right. Obviously, Edwin Diaz brings the most to this bullpen. He can pitch in New York. He's proven it already. He could pitch in the postseason. And he's really turned his career around from that 2019 season. Now, it's like Jeff Cohen saying, sign Diaz now and move on. Don't need the drama of, filling in another spot. Just don't need it. Bring Diaz back. Penn needs Diaz, as Coconut says. Re-sign Tyler Rogers paired with Rayleigh and AJ Minter and Brazoban. Still need 2 more consistent pieces. No more 4.5 to 6 ERA guys like Stanek, Soto, Helsley. They lost this season. I 100% agree with this. I want Diaz back, and I also want Tyler Rogers back. I love the arm angle. I love that he is a submariner type pitcher. Bring both Edwin Diaz and Tyler Rogers. That's a good start to getting this bullpen where it needs to be. And obviously, as he says, they need to add more pieces too. So do that as well. Other names out there, Robert Suarez, Devin Williams, who I'm not keen on. I know people want Devin Williams, but I'm sure Devin Williams wants to close somewhere and not be the setup man. And I don't know if he wants to play in New York after what happened this season with the Yankees, this past season. Other names out there, Pete Fairbanks, Emilio Pagan are names that I'm looking at. Kyle Finnegan. None of these guys really live up to what Edwin Diaz can do for this team. And I know that the bullpen is fickle. You get Jekyll and Hyde, 1 year good, 1 year bad. But let's be honest, Edwin Diaz has been pretty consistent. And I know he had a little bit of struggles last year, but he was coming back from the injury from 2023 that he was out the whole season for. And he pitched pretty good. Not 2022 Edwin Diaz. That was more of what we saw this season. But I do think Edwin Diaz is a must re-sign, as Brad put it. And Shark Vader Studios, Diaz has been my top priority this offseason. He needs to come back. He's been more of a priority to me than Pete Alonso right now. Although I don't know how I feel considering the fact that Nimmo's gone, because we'll need to replace that bat as well. But Diaz is the best possible option. And I do think that they get a deal done. Peter's saying that Minaya will be in the bullpen. So you have 3 lefties in the bullpen, where for some seasons, the last couple of years, they've had none. But he's pitched in the bullpen for San Francisco. That's how he turned his career around. And maybe that gets it done. The Rogers, Suarez, and Williams would be nice if Diaz goes. Yeah, if Edwin Diaz does not return, that's a nice haul for the bullpen. Chester Matias saying, absolutely, Diaz is a must. I also bring back Rogers, 100% agree with that. Carl Stern was saying Diaz will be paid. Minter will be back. Manaya will be in the bullpen. The others need one more shutdown arm. Edwin Diaz is the number one priority. You're saying, what about an outfielder? Gonna have to go back to the beginning of the show because we talked about all the outfield possible options. So make sure you check out the beginning there. The only issue with Diaz, this is a good point. I love Diaz, but he can't hold a runner on. I think that the Mets can deal with that. Because if Edwin Diaz is striking out most of these guys, then they're not running on him. But that is always a concern when it comes to Edwin Diaz. Shark Very Stu is saying, we already know Diaz can pitch in New York. He can pitch under pressure. Bring him back. Coconut saying, I think Stearns and league doesn't value Penn as year-to-year inconsistency, but think that's short-sighted. Chester saying, Pagan is definitely my 8th inning guy. Emilio Pagan had a wins above replacement of 1.5. He was really good last season with I think it was the Cincinnati Reds. Yeah, 2.88 ERA for the Cincinnati Reds last season. Armand saying, give me Diaz and one of Nick Martinez, Fairbanks, Pagan, or Robert Suarez. Diaz, number 1. Get that set up, man. And I think we are set to go, right? Because we talked about Minter, Raley. Bring back Tyler Rogers to me is very important as well. And you got Brazaban in the bullpen, who I know is iffy, but he's definitely better than Ryan Stanek, that's for sure. Shout out to FFA Sports Host for reposting this stream. I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing it. 220 people in the room right now. A lot of you in this chat. We're having a good time. We're trying to get this Mets team to be better this season. And there's just so many options to putting this team together. And as John puts it, the Nimmo deal opens the door more for an Alonso return. Diaz is still the more important re-sign of the two. You can convince me that the Mets are as good with a combination of players replacing Pete. Say Bellinger, Bregman. I know you're a huge Bellinger fan. Bichette, I don't. So if Bichette comes here, right? Because this is a guy that I thought that the Mets would move on from now that they have Semien. I assume that you're having him play third base, John. If we're talking about bringing in a Bo Bichette type guy. So I'd like to know a little bit more on where your stance is with Bo Bichette, because if he's not playing second, he's not playing shortstop. That's the finality of those two positions is pretty much done with Semien and Lindor. So I assume that he's playing third, and you would be trading a Brett Beatty. Thanks, Maureen, so much for the $10 super chat. I really appreciate it. Loving the chat today. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving with all of your family members and friends out there. Run Night 121 says, just win. Tired of these off seasons saying next year. Yeah, we need to win. And this team needs to put together a good roster so we can do that. It's just been too much nonsense that's been going on. And we mentioned it at the beginning of the show really briefly, but we won't talk about that too much anymore moving forward. Chester Matias saying Diaz should be Mets 100% priority before they do anything else. Must. You're just saying you can't be afraid to spend the money. Absolutely. Especially that it's not my money. It's David's. It's Steve Cohen's money, and he's got a lot of it. Brad thinks that Dylan Ross will play a role this season in the bullpen. Was Dylan Ross the guy that they brought up at the end of the season and didn't use him in that Miami series? I think he was. That they just had him sit on the bench. I think he was one, and they decided, let's go to Ryan Stanek instead. Michael King saying Diaz is a priority, then you can go many different directions with the other bullpen options. Chester agrees with Brad about Dylan Ross being in the bullpen. Coconut saying that don't need a third baseman. Bichette too expensive, and Bregman got $40 million last year for 3.6 WAR. Beatty under $1 million for 3.1 WAR. He is our third baseman, won the job with the second half, where in 55 games hit 291, 9 homers, 30 runs. I really do hope that Brett Beatty works out this season, right? We go into every spring hoping that Brett Beatty works out, comes in to start the season, struggles, gets sent down, comes back. And this was his best performance the second half of the season. Played great third base, played very well at second base. And if Brett Beatty can provide the production that he did last season in that second half, that helps big time with not having to worry about that position via free agency or via trade. Armand saying Bo's defense stinks at short, so most likely he plays second base, but base, not short and third. Lord Rage saying no way Miami trades with the Mets. If they do, it's going to cost way too much. I totally agree with that. User saying that they should sign Alonso, which I agree. Jaden Romero mentioning Christian Scott from earlier on in the chat. Yeah, he's going to be an option that this rotation is going to be talked about. I don't know about the bullpen, though. Although a lot of people, when he came up, saying that he was more of a bullpen guy. Baseball Dad saying Beatty has officially arrived. Carlos Ortiz, I don't like Beatty, but I'll root for him as long as he has a Met. The Green Mystique saying, what about Alozay in the bullpen, signed a year ago from Chicago? I mean, there's so many answers. There's so many options for this team and where they're willing to go. It just all depends on how David Stearns crafts the rest of this roster. Chester saying, let's see if the new hitting philosophy and coaches keep up with Beatty and his improvement. The thing I like about this, I guess he's not the hitting coach, but Jeff Albert has worked in this organization for a couple of years already and has worked in the minor leagues with some of these players. I know Troy Snickers coming over from Houston or St. Louis, but Jeff Albert has been in this organization and has worked with these kids. A lot of the coaching staff that they brought in this year have been in the minor leagues and has worked with a lot of these prospects, which is good and what they need. That's what I said from the beginning. I said, if the Mets are bringing in a pitching coach and they're bringing in a hitting coach, that it probably should be from within, because how much knowledge are you going to share with veterans on this staff already? You need to help out the guys like Tong and Sproat and McLean and, the kids that are already on this roster. So having them, Jeff Albert being a part of this organization has been huge. And Snicker did come from Houston. Thank you, Armand. I think it was Jeff Albert who was originally from St. Louis and then came to the Mets a few years back. John says, my point on Bichette or Bregman isn't about them as much as it is about replacing Pete. I'm not sold on Beatty. I hope he works out, but I'm not letting him be the reason I don't trade for a better guy. Absolutely. If you can get better at the position, you make the move. Brad saying this team is in good shape. It's work to do, and they will work to help improve this team. When was the last time we had trust in the franchise to do that? And John saying you have to give to get. Beatty is the only sell-high trade piece the Mets can offer that's not a prospect. That's a great point. Vientos, Acuna, Mauricio, Peterson, Senga, McNeil, value is all down. Absolutely. So if you are going to trade from high value, Brett Beatty is probably the guy. And you're not going to get much from the other guys, although, they're trying to bring up Acuna's value in the winter leagues right now. So we'll see, what happens there. Carl Stern was saying, I think we can all admit this, for having the richest owner in all of U.S. sports, we definitely don't look at the offseason as if we did. time will tell, right? Let's see what happens when we get to pitchers and catchers in spring training and see where this team's at, because that will be the determining factor. Same thing with the giving our thoughts on where we think the Semien Nimmo deal ranks. We still need to know where the rest of the team is at this point. Jeff Cohen saying trade Beatty after the QBC, because he will be at the QBC for sure. Jaden Romero saying McLean, Holmes, Sproat, Peterson, Scott, Manaea if the season started today. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. McLean, definitely. Holmes, I think, with another year in the rotation will be good for him. Peterson, obviously. Scott and Manaea. I don't know where Senga fits. Maybe you think he gets traded. I don't think he comes out of the bullpen. I don't think he was out of the bullpen. Lord Rage saying, imagine Omar Manaea was still the GM with Cohen's cash. Yeah, he'd be spending a lot like he did. And those were probably the two best off seasons of 2005 and 2006 of all the signings that they made. Those are big off seasons, getting Pedro and Carlos Beltran. I think we got spoiled from that. Then Wagner and LaDuca and Delgado, although Delgado was via trade. But he did make a lot of big moves in that 2005-2006 offseason. Duran Rivera, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Great show as usual, and great comments and proposals by the chat. Shout out to John Sapernaro and Joe DeMeo. Shout out to them. G-Money Stacks saying, we got to trust the process during the offseason and let it play out while the stove is hot and cooking. Chester Mattia is saying, Don McKinney, the new assistant pitching coach, was with the young guys at Binghamton as their pitching coach. Yeah, that's why I wanted these guys brought up here, so that they can mentor the Sproats and Tongs and McLeans of the world. Ken Thal saying, richest owner, cheapest GM. It feels like that right now, and we'll have to see what he does during this offseason, because not everything is going to be via free agency. I need to see the finished product that we have in spring training to really assess this offseason. But I know that David Stearns gets a lot of heat, and some of it rightfully so. John Sabanaro saying it's really disingenuous to say that Steve Cohen isn't acting like the owner with the most money in the sport. We have had a top 2 payroll since he got here, and we just signed Juan Soto. Right. Absolutely. They just got to spend wisely and spend it on the right players. They've tried. Cohen's tried. He tried in 2002 with bringing in Scherzer and then bringing in Verlander in 2023. Now he's got Soto. Let's see what else he's got up his sleeve. Michael King saying to give Stearns a chance. I think this is a big year for Stearns. This is going to be his team. This is going to be Stearns' team after this. Especially if Alonso goes and Edwin Diaz goes, then it's fully a David Stearns team. But I think he'll bring those guys back. Lord Rage saying top payroll don't mean crap if your players are crap, which is why I said they got to make these moves wisely and spend wisely. To the richest contract in American sports history, they're in on every major free agent every year. Just because we traded a bad contract and Brandon Nimmo doesn't mean the Mets are acting like a rich team. That's from John Sapernaro. Carl Zermo saying a top 2 payroll because we had handed out massive contracts to mediocre players. It is what it is. And then Jaden Romero saying Senga and Stearns have a weird relationship. So for that reason, I think he will be traded possibly with McNeil to somewhere like the Royals. That would be an interesting if they are able to package both McNeil and Senga together, those are the two next candidates that I would be trading as Jeff McNeil, obviously. And it doesn't have to do with, raccoon or all that stuff. I just think it's time to move on from Jeff McNeil, and his production is not worth the contract that he's being paid. And moving on from Senga, I think is also something that the Mets need to do. They need stability in the rotation, and he doesn't provide that, unfortunately. Shark Radio Studios saying, I am not giving up on Stearns. I am not in the camp of Stearns sucks, but I do think that this is a big offseason for him. It will be hard to defend him if we go nowhere in 26. And that's where I land here, because that's what I said at the beginning of the show, that this is the absolute biggest offseason in David Stearns' tenure. Now, if they fail and not get to the postseason, which I think would be an epic fail again, they don't make it to the postseason, I don't think he's going to be fired. I still think he will be here to finish out his contract. I mean, look at Brian Cashman. I mean, even though they've made the playoffs multiple times or every year, they still have not improved to win the World Series. And they still keep him. So I don't think Stearns is going to go anywhere. I think Stearns will still be here. But I will have my concerns if he doesn't get this team to the postseason, if he can lead this team. The Green Mystique saying, where there is smoke, there's fire. Senga and McNeil are good as gone. And I hope that's the case. Brad saying Stearns is trying to fix Epler's mistakes. Yeah. You sign McNeil to the deal that you did. You signed Brandon Nimmo to the deal that you did. And these are some of the handful of mistakes that need to be fixed. And he's made his own, as Carl Schramm was saying. David Stearns has made his own mistakes, but he's in charge right now. So he has the opportunity to fix them. All right, before we wrap up this show, a few news and happenings. The Mets signed a couple of players here. And as I said, taxi squad type players that the Mets have signed. Robert Stock, he pitched for the Mets in 2021 to a 5.40 ERA, had a 10.13 ERA in 2 2/3 innings pitched for Boston last season. You have Anderson Severino, left-handed pitcher. Last time he was in the major leagues in 2022, 6.14 ERA in 6 games, but 2.68 ERA in the Mexican League last season, and in the Dominican Winter League, 5 2/3 scoreless innings. Nick Birdie pitched for Boston last season, 5 1/3 innings pitched, had a 2.83 ERA in AAA and a 1.86 ERA in 12 appearances for the New York Yankees in 2024. Jose Ramos, who I've been talking about being in the outfield, 2025 for AAA Oklahoma City, 295 batting average, 8 home runs, 27 RBIs, and a 916 OPS, was a top 30 prospect in the Dodgers system as recently as 2024. Because of a logjam with the Dodgers and the winning World Series team that they have, he didn't get a chance. Dodgers organization and their fans have been very, very high on Jose Ramos. So let's see what he provides. All these minor league deals with an invite to spring training, except for Nick Birdie, though. I'm not sure if he has an invite to spring training, but I could see Jose Ramos and Birdie having a little bit of staying power on this team. Given the roster construction, they could be a little bit of sleeper signings here. The Queens Baseball Convention, as you know, John Saponaro, who's in the chat, he's hosting the Queens Baseball Convention like he does every year. Shout out to Keith Blacknick and the Media Goon for putting this together. Saturday, December 13th at the 4 Points by Sheraton, 3368 Farrington Street, Flushing, Queens, New York. Starts at 10 a.m. through 6 p.m. Tickets are available at thequeensbaseballconvention.com or Eventbrite. You'll see Jesse Orozco there from the 1986 World Champions, Terry Collins, Tom Hallion, as you know, the ass in the jackpot, as well as Brett Beatty. All will be a part of panels. All will be signing autographs and doing photo ops. So make sure you get your tickets. And I will be there as part of the State of the Mets panel hosted by Mark Healy. That starts at 10:45 in the morning. So make sure you get out there, say hello, I will be talking with all the fans. We've done this for now. This is going to be my third straight year doing the Queens Baseball Convention. It's a lot of fun to be around. John will tell you. Ibby will be there from Till Mets Do Us Part. SNY will be there doing their show and their panel. I think Baseball Night in New York. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And one last thing, I will be on Straight Out of Flushing with my guy Dexter Henry, New York Post. We're recording today. I think it may be coming out tomorrow or maybe tonight. But Straight Out of Flushing, I will be on the show, and we'll be doing a fun little activity of kind of who to keep in the cart, who to take off on your Mets wish list this offseason. So make sure you check out Straight Out of Flushing. I will share that link on all social platforms. A shout out to everyone in the chat. Man, I appreciate you all for being here, part of this show this morning. Always fun to do these at 10 a.m. in the morning, although last time I did the little midnight show after Brandon Nimmo got traded. But shout out to everyone in the chat. Great. Hope to see Master Flip out there at the QBC. Make sure you guys are all there to have be a part of that fun show that they put together. Thanks to Michael King for the great content comment, and Run Knight for the great show comment. Really appreciate every single one of you for being in the chat. Make sure you are following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me personally at Ant Rivera 86. Subscribe to the Subway to Shea podcast if you prefer to listen to it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But if you want to be a part of the chat, if you want to be a part of the conversation, you are doing that right here on YouTube. You could also chime in on X, but the best place to conversate with everyone else, and because this is mostly like a forum for me. So we're doing this fun chat. We're talking about everything New York Mets. You want to be a part of that? You're subscribing on YouTube, and you can support the Subway to Shea podcast with super chat, super stickers, and super thanks. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of the show, for tuning in. This has been Anthony Rivera, and always remember, let's go Mets.